Okay, good morning. Thank you for your practice during the retreat. You sat 2 or 3 days. I'm sorry I didn't sit. Actually, I haven't been sitting since last Rohat session because of my pain on my knees and back and hips. So I really appreciate, Hoko and other people's, effort to continue the practice. Anyway, today I start to talk on chapter 8 of this book, Opening the Hand of Thought. This is the last chapter of this book, and the title of this chapter is The Wayseeker. Let me read the short introduction and 7 points of practice Uchiyama Roshi are going to talk. This entire chapter is a transcription of his lecture, his final lecture at Antaiji. So as introduction, I talk how this lecture became a part of this book. And this title, Wayseeker, what Wayseeker means. So let me read the short introduction and those 7 points. If you have this book, page 139. The Wayseeker. In February 1975, Uchiyama Roshi gave his last lecture at Antaiji before retiring as abbot. It was snowing heavily that day, and 100 people listened for over 2 hours to his farewell address, The Wayseeker, in which he tried to pass on to all his followers a clear direction for practicing true Dharma. And those 7 points of practice are, 1, study and practice the Buddha Dharma only for the sake of the Buddha Dharma, not for the sake of emotions or worldly ideas. 2, Zazen is our truest and most venerable teacher. 3, Zazen must work concretely in our daily lives as the 2 practices, vow and repentance. The 3 minds, magnanimous mind, nurturing mind, and joyful mind, and the realization of the saying, gaining is delusion, losing is enlightenment. 4, live by vow and root it deeply. 5, realizing that development and backsliding are your responsibility alone. Endeavor to practice and develop. 6, sit silently for 10 years, then for 10 more years, and then for another 10 years. 7, cooperate with one another and aim to create a place where sincere practitioners can practice without trouble. These are 7 points Uchiyama Roshi talked during this his final lectures. as it is said in the introduction, this lecture was given in 1975. Exactly date is February 23rd. I remember this date very well. And this is Sunday, so this was part of Sunday activity at Antaiji. Anyway, I remember this date well because this was very important time for me. He gave this lecture on this day. Next day, on Monday, he left Antaiji. So this was really final talk by my teacher. And also on February 15th, I received Dharma transmission from him. I was the last person who received Dharma transmission from him. So it was very important time in my life. And I also left Antaiji in early March and went to Zuyoji Monastery and practiced there for 6 months to get a qualification as a teacher, Soto Zen teacher, in order to get a missionary visa to come to this country. And in December of that year, I went to Massachusetts. So this is very kind of important point in my life also. And I was 26 years old in February, and I became 27 in June. Anyway, Uchiyama Roshi became the abbot of Antaiji in 1965. This is the year Uchiyama Roshi's teacher, Kodo Sawaki Roshi, passed away. When Sawaki Roshi died, Uchiyama Roshi did not want to stay at Antaiji because Antaiji was very poor country, poor temple without any family members. So that means there's no, income. So he had been practicing by himself and with few people, and they supported their practice by begging, by takuatsu. Beside the donation he got through takuatsu, he had no income at all. So Uchiyama Roshi thought he moved to somewhere else. But if Uchiyama Roshi left, no one took care of this poor half-broken temple. So the priest of other temples near there asked Sawaki Roshi to let Uchiyama Roshi, take over Antaiji. So Uchiyama Roshi couldn't say no. But when he became the abbot, after Sawaki Roshi's death, he declared that I will be the abbot of Antaiji only for 10 years. So 10 years after 65 is 75. So he taught as an abbot only for 10 years. So he made a plan, and he said he also tried to follow his plan. I think he wanted to retire sooner because from 1973, he was quite very sick, and last 2 years, he couldn't start session, and he couldn't give Sunday lectures. Before that, he sat all the session with us, and he gave Sunday Dharma talk Actually, he gave 2 talks on Sundays, actually 2 Sundays a month. And his talk was always 1.5 hours. So he talked 3 hours on Sundays, twice a month. But I think from the spring of 73, he couldn't give a talk. So he was mostly taking a rest and taking care of his body. He was so weak because he had TB. Since his early 20s, he married when he was a university student. But his first wife had TB, but through taking care of his first wife, he transmitted TB from her. So since then, he lived not so too serious, so he could live with other people. But he always had lived with TB, and almost half of his lung didn't work. So during especially hot and humid summer in Kyoto, it was difficult even for breathing. So I think if possible, he wanted to retire sooner, but he tried to follow his plan to be there about for 10 years. That is why, he stayed at Antaiji until this day. Anyway, when it is said, the title of this talk is The Wayseeker, but when he gave a talk, he didn't have the title. Those 7 points are called Antaiji ni nokosu kotoba. Antaiji, kotoba is word, and nokosu is, what is a nokosu? Bequeath, B-E-Q-U-E-A-T-H. Does this make sense? The word I request to Antaiji. That means as a kind of a gift. When he left Antaiji, he offered these 7 points as his introduction, or something like a well. The sutra, short sutra, that is a record of Shakyamuni Buddha's last teaching, was called Sutra on the Buddha's bequeathed teaching. So this is the same kind of teaching by Uchiyama Roshi to his students. So to me, or to us, these 7 points are really important. And when I started to live at Varezendo in Massachusetts, we translated these 7 points, only the points, and translated it and put it in the frame and hung it at the entrance of the Zendo. So all people who came to practice at Varezendo knew these 7 points. But the rest of the lecture was not translated. So some of the people who practiced there asked me to translate what Uchiyama Roshi actually said about those 7 points. So I think that was about 1980. I went to Massachusetts 75, so about 5 years after I went to Massachusetts. In this year, I had a problem, physical problem. I had pain on my neck and shoulder, elbows, and knees, and low back. Everything is right side. That means those pain came from hard work. In my 20s, I thought the harder I worked, the stronger my body became. And it worked during my 20s. But after I became 30, it didn't work in that way. So I started have pain, many part of my body. So I couldn't work when other people worked. So they asked me work on translation. And originally this is my translation. I translate this 1980, so more than 40 years ago. It's amazing. This is my second translation work. The first work I translated was Fukanza Zengi. At Barezendo, we didn't have lectures. Instead of lectures, we had a discussion group reading a certain text. First, we read Shobo Genzo Zuimonki. There was English translation of Zuimonki by Masunaga Reiho. I think it is still available. But after we finished, Zuimonki, we discussed, one section each time. But after we finished Zuimonki, we didn't have any text to discuss. So I decided to translate Fukanza Zengi. That is a short manual of Zazen written by Dogen Zenji. And the translation is Universal Recommendation of Zazen. So this is actually my second translation work. And when in 1981, I went back to Kyoto, and Uchiyama Roshi asked me to work on translation with another disciple of Uchiyama Roshi. He is American. His name is Daitu Tom Wright. Uchiyama Roshi asked me to work on translation with Tom Wright. And at that time, the original translation of this book was published in English in 1973, so before Uchiyama Roshi retired. But that first version was out of print by 1980. So Tom Wright and I decided to make new translation. And I wanted to add this final lecture of Uchiyama Roshi to the book. And Tom Wright added something in the beginning of this book that was another talk by Uchiyama Roshi to the foreigners. Anyway, so this chapter was originally my translation more than 40 years ago. And at that time, my English was not so good, of course. I studied English only in the graduate school, middle school, high school, and graduate school. And Uchiyama Roshi sent 3 of his disciples, including me, to English school. But we mainly studied English conversation. So I didn't really study English for writing. So I don't care about the quality of my English. But my purpose was to show what Uchiyama Roshi, said to those several American people who practice with us. So I had no expectation this translation would be published. So I don't care about the quality of English, of my English. So there are, I used many unique English expressions. And, the expression opening the hand of thought became this title of this book, Opening the Hand of Thought. This expression was used in this translation. And when I translated and show my translation to Arthur Braverman, who lived in New York at the time, and sometimes I visited him to do session together. And when I showed my translation of this lecture to him, he said, opening the hand of thought is not good. He said, it's not English. And I know it was not English because it was very literal translation of Japanese expression used by Uchiyama Roshi. But I didn't care, I had no desire to write a standard, good, understandable English for common readers. I only to show what Uchiyama Roshi said to the people who practice with us. So only several American practitioners. And I'm not sure now, but possibly this word Wayseeker was another one. Yesterday I tried to look at English dictionary. There's no such word in English. Do you know this word as an English word? I don't know. But this is also a very literal translation of the expression Uchiyama Roshi used. As I said, when he gave this lecture had no title. But in 1977, so after his retirement, he made a book entitled Gudo. Gu and Do. Gu means to seek, and Do is way. And this is very common Japanese word as a Buddhist term. Gudo is seeking the way. And this is the title of the book he made in 1977. And this lecture was part of that book. And as a title of this lecture, he named as Gudo Sha. Gudo is seeking the way, and Sha is a person. So a person who seeks the way is Gudo Sha. And I'm not sure if this is really my translation or not. Maybe someone else, maybe Tom Wright or Jisho Wana. But I made a very literal translation of this word, Gudo Sha, as a way seeker, person who seek the way. And this is not this expression is a common Buddhist term. And for example, I checked in the Lotus Sutra, this word Gudo Sha appeared in the very end of the chapter 1, titled Introduction. In the first chapter of the Lotus Sutra, Buddha didn't say anything. Before the sutra started, Buddha gave a Dharma discourse. And he stopped talking and he entered samadhi. He was sitting without talking. And somehow he emitted the light from his forehead, and this light illuminated the entire universe. And so people in the assembly was wondered what this happens. And at that time there were many bodhisattvas and monks and lay people and deities. All of them questioned, what is this? What is this sign? And I think Manjushri said, now Buddha is going to talk about the Lotus Sutra, the final teaching, the decisive teaching of Mahayana. And at that very end of this chapter, the Lotus Sutra says, the present sign, so emitting light, the present sign is like the previous auspicious occurrences. They are the Buddha's skillful means. Buddha's skillful means. The present Buddha, means Shakyamuni, emit a beam of light and illuminated entire universe to help reveal the principle of the true character of things. This true character of things is another translation of Shoho Jisso. I translate this as true reality of all beings. I'm sorry, Shoho. Shoho Jisso. Sho means all, and Ho in this case, Dharma means phenomenal beings, so things. And this is true, and so is forms. But I translate this as a true reality of all beings. This is most important, at least one of the most important expressions appeared in the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra says all Buddhas, without any exception, appeared in this world to show and teach this true reality of all beings. And this expression is also important in Dogen Zenji's teaching. I think the last year I gave lectures on Shoho Jisso, Shobo Genzo, Shoho Jisso during the Genzoe. When I start to talk about what Shoho Jisso is, it takes more than 1 hour. So I'm going to talk, I'm sure, during the lectures on this talk. So today I don't talk, but this is what the Lotus Sutra said, what Shakyamuni Buddha was teaching, true reality of all beings. And after that, next, he said, the Buddha, the Sutra says, the time has come. The time has come for people to understand. With your palms gasho, palms together, that is gasho, do gasho, with your palms together, wait single-mindedly. The Buddha will pour, P-O-U-R, pour like a rain, pour the rain of the Dharma. To satisfy those who seek the way. To satisfy those who seek the way is Gudosha. To satisfy people or those who seek the way. So this is from, I think this expression is much older than the Lotus Sutra. This expression is used before the Lotus Sutra, but especially in Japan, especially Dogen studied Tendai teaching, and the main sutra of Tendai was the Lotus Sutra. So for Dogen, this is important, was Shohoji So. So that is the origin of this expression, Wayseeker, in Japanese, or as a Buddhist term. And actually, this people are those who seek the way means Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is the person who allowed bodhicitta. Bodhi is awakening, and citta is mind. So in English, we usually call this body mind or awakening mind, or another Chinese translation of Chinese transliteration is Bodai-shin. Bodai is a transliteration of body, mind, Bodai-shin. But another, not transliteration, but translation of Bodai-shin is Do-shin. Do-shin, way mind. And way mind is, when we allowed bodhicitta, we are not attained awakening yet. So this is called way-seeking mind. That is another English translation. Way-seeking mind, the mind which seeks awakening. So actually, Gudo-shin is another translation of bodhicitta, or awakening mind. So Gudosha means a person who has our aroused body mind, bodhicitta. So this is another translation of bodhisattva. And what is bodhisattva? Or he said, when he made the book in 77, he titled the book named Gudo, Way Seeking. That is because his life was the life of way seeking the way. When he was a teenager, somehow he wanted to study what is the truth. And he wanted to live based on that truth. But he didn't know what is the truth. So he wanted to study what is the truth. To do so, at the university, he studied Western philosophy. And he finished graduate school. He studied mainly German philosophy. And after he finished graduate school, he became a teacher at a Catholic seminary. He taught philosophy and mathematics, and he studied Catholic theology. So that is the process of his studying of what is truth. But somehow he said he thought he needs to become a Buddhist monk. So when he was 29 years old, he became a Buddhist monk, ordained by Kodo Sawaki Roshi. So since he was 29, he practiced Zazen. And somehow he found truth, he believed. That is Buddha's awakening, or Dogen's teaching of just sitting. And so after he thought he discovered the truth, so before that he was a kind of a Wayseeker, he was seeking the way. And after that he became a kind of a teacher. And while he was staying at Antaiji as the abbot, he shared the truth he discovered with the younger people. So in that book, he said his life was seeking the way, and after he discovered the way, he shared the way with younger people. That means he grow or educate way seekers. So he thought his entire life was about seeking the way. That's why he entitled that book called Gudo, or Way Seeking. And I think at that time he titled this lecture as a Gudo Sha, Way Seeker, those who seek the way. So important point to understand what this way means. This is same as this body. Chinese people are kind of strange to me. English word body, that means awakening. But somehow Chinese Buddhists translate this body or awakening as Tao. So Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, that is unsurpassable, complete, perfect enlightenment or body or awakening, as for example, Mujodo. Jo means above, and Mu is no, that means nothing above, that means highest. Highest Tao is a translation of Sanskrit word Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So, this in Chinese Buddhism, this word Tao has so many meanings. It's really difficult to understand. Tao is a most important word, not only in Chinese Buddhism, but Taoism is the teaching about Tao, what Tao is. And Confucianism in Confucianism also, Tao is important. Tao is, in Confucianism, Tao is like, the sun and moons and stars move around in the same way. And Confucianists thought that is a way. See, as all those suns and moons, and also the seasons throughout the year, each year move in the same way. That is the way. So the Confucianism thought you know, everything has a way. So as a human beings, we need to have a way. We have to follow the way. And that is human or social ethics or morality is the way. So in Confucianism, the way means ethics, human way. We have to follow to be a good member of the society. But as a Taoist, such a human way, human morality is not the real way. That means much higher or deeper. This way is nothingness, beyond phenomenal things. So, Taoism and Confucianism are already there when Buddhism was introduced from India. So Chinese people interpret Buddhist teaching based on those Chinese philosophies. So this is one of the kind of strange things Chinese people interpret, in this case, Buddhist word, body, awakening, as Tao. In my thinking mind, how can I don't understand why Tao and awakening can be the same. But anyway, that is what this Gudo Sha means. So in this case, in Buddhist case, this Tao means awakening, Buddha's awakening. So Gudo means seeking the way, means seeking Buddha's awakening. So I think this is important when we think, when we read, Buddhist text in English translation, there are many words, especially this word way was translated as at least several different Sanskrit, Chinese, Japanese words. As I said, the way is a translation of awakening. But another important meaning of the way is a translation of Sanskrit word marga. Marga means the path. We have to walk. So marga, is when we are as bodhicitta, we walk the path toward the Buddha's awakening or Buddhahood. This, path is called the way. And another interesting thing is the way is used as a translation of Sanskrit word gate. Gate means realms, in the 6 realms of samsara. Within samsara there are 6 realms, and we transmigrate with those 6 realms. Those 6 realms are also translated as the way. Like Rokudo, 6 ways means 6 realms of samsara. So when we read this Chinese word Tao in Buddhist text or English text way, we need to think what this means. Way, so in the case of Rokudo, that is the way we transmigrate within samsara. And as a marga, this is the way, as a practitioner, we walk from samsara to nirvana, a cessation of the way. And this goal is also called the way. This is really strange. The way we transmigrated within delusion is the way. And the path we walk toward realization or nirvana is also the way. And the goal, that is nirvana or awakening, is also the way. This is one of the difficulty to study Buddhism through translation, whether English translation or Chinese translation. I think, Sanskrit and Buddhist and English are very close as a language. So translate from Sanskrit, directly from Sanskrit to English is much easier. But going through Chinese and Japanese, things are so twisted. I'm sorry about that, but that is my karma. Anyway, so seeking the way means seeking Buddha's awakening. Well, that is what I have to say as an introduction of this text. So this lecture is about how we seek the way. Even when I use the way, I often didn't make clear distinction between whether this is the way to walk as a process of practice or the way as Buddha's awakening. So please be careful. Anyway, that's all I have to say this morning. And from next time, I started to talk on each of those 7 points. Okay, any question or comment?
I'm going to
Okay.
adjust this here a little bit.
Any question or comments?
Yeah.
I'm happy if you don't have any question. Okay, please.
Oh, well, it's sort of a comment. Taoism was the subject of my dissertation.
Oh,
And so that was a particular focus of mine for a while.
Mhm.
It was while I was doing that, I met Professor Abe,
Mhm.
who was teaching
Mhm.
at CIIS.
Mhm.
I wound up taking all his courses,
Mhm.
and he was living at the San Francisco Zen Center.
Uh-huh.
So I started going there to visit him, and that's when I started doing Zazen.
Mhm.
It was sort of through Taoism.
Mhm.
But one thing I like, you talk about how when Taoism was introduced into China during the Han Dynasty, they just assumed it was a form of Taoism.
Mhm.
I mean, when Buddhism was introduced during the Han Dynasty, they just assumed it was a form of Taoism. There's even ideas that Lao Tzu, he went west and then he became the Buddha,
Mhm.
and then that Lao Tzu's teaching was the Buddha, then came back.
Yeah.
But that's one myth that they had.
Yeah.
But one thing I like about the entanglement going from Sanskrit to Chinese, Japanese, and then back to English,
Mhm.
it seems like the Dharma is transcultural and
Ah.
beyond language.
Mhm.
So by kind of filtering it through another language before we get it,
Uh-huh.
we get more of that transcultural, translinguistic notions involved in it.
Mhm. So in order to understand the meaning of this particular word way or Tao, we have to study all of them to clearly understand.
I remember I really pushed Abu a couple of times. Said,
Mm.
was Lao Tzu enlightened? And it took me 3 or 4 times asking him. He didn't want to answer the question. I just said yes.
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't think Lao Tzu was enlightened?
Dogen Zenji didn't like that idea.
Ah.
The idea means Chinese Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism are one or the same. Dogen clearly criticized that idea. So Dogen is a kind of a strange person.
Yeah,
He didn't say everything is okay.
I did notice in Shohaku Okumura,
Yeah.
every time he references Taoism,
Mm.
it's sort of like,
Right.
They'll mislead you.
Right. Okay, thank you for your comment. Anything else? Please.
I wanted to thank you for a wonderful talk.
Mm.
And because I don't have the benefit of such study, but it seems to me that one of the conclusions of all these words is the attempt to make into words something that is basically not verbal.
Mm. Yeah, that is the idea of all those three, at least two, Taoism and Buddhism. The truth or reality cannot be explained or expressed using language. So in Taoism, Tao is nothingness that is beyond any discrimination or any language or conceptual thinking. And Buddha's awakening is also beyond discrimination. So that is the Chinese people's idea. Those three are one thing. As a reality beyond thinking. This reality is really one, just one. And different people interpret, understand, and interpret and express different ways. That is a very kind of a common idea in China and Japan also. Okay, please.
Is this in discussing reality that is beyond the verbal? Is this part of what's called the esoteric?
Yes, esoteric Buddhism, such as Vajrayana Buddhism, think that reality is beyond thinking. Okay, but I'm sorry. Again, Dogen didn't like esoteric Buddhism. Please.
I'm curious to know, is it that Dogen thought was wrong with that? Just like what his argument.
I recommend you to read the entire Shohaku Genzo to understand. His expression is really poetic and beautiful, but not logical. So it's really difficult. What is his point? If you are a philosopher, please read Shohaku Genzo and study what is his basic logic. Maybe he didn't have logic. He had insight, but not logic. He put more emphasis on practice, doing, probably. Okay. Anything else?
Hojo-san, I have a question if you can hear me.
Okay.
So I think when you talked about Shobogenzo Shoho Jiso, you said that phrase is not actually in the original Sanskrit version of the text, and Kumarajiva sort of created it.
Yeah.
And yet, that phrase became really important in East Asian Buddhism.
Yes.
Even though it sort of has no actual basis in some sense in the original tradition. So I guess I have a kind of a question about how translation can kind of create doctrine, and if we should be cautious about that, since we're in the process of translating things into English.
Yeah, creative translators such as Kumarajiva actually created the teaching after, so almost all Chinese Buddhist masters after Kumarajiva studied Buddhism using his commentary, his translations. So translation is really important function. It can make change. When I work on translation and when I am done, always I'm sad in a sense, because when I read both original Japanese, in my case, Japanese and English, there's something is missing, and there's something added, and something twisted. With in the process of translation, these are cannot be avoided. So translation is, in a sense, a creation, something twisted. So there's no perfect translation. For example, opening the hand of thought. This is very strange English, I think, expression. No one understand what this means before reading Uchiyama Roshi's book and practice with us. But somehow, some American practitioners like this expression, opening the hand of thought. That's why this book is still read. So one thing we have to understand is we should not completely trust translation. But another thing is, therefore, translation is important. I think that is what he said. I mean, who is he? Or John Macrae said everything written in Zen literature is false. That's why that false, for fake news is important. Okay.